So I'm Francois Heisbourg. I'm a special advisor in a Paris-based think tank called la Fondation pour la Recherche Stratégique. I'm also chairman of the International Institute for Strategic Studies in London and of the Geneva Center for Security Policy. But I've also made a number of excursions into the field of economics, both because economics have become strategically important, which means that it's also part of my sphere of intellectual interest, but also because I have become involved here in France in the discussion, such as it is on the future of Europe.
And how or why did you become hooked to the European Union?
The hooking to the European Union happened from childhood. I mean, half of me comes from Luxembourg, so you know, I'm like Robert Schumann. You know, I fell into the kettle like Obélix into the magic potion when I was a baby. So it's always been part of the thematic in which I've lived. I was part of Jacques Delors' think tank back in the late 70s, 80s, 90s called Notre Europe, and I was involved in the discussions on the three referenda that we've had on European affairs in this country in 1972, in 1993, and again in 2005. And of course, what has played a major role in my current excursions is the global financial crisis, which has had, of course, major strategic implications, but has also had, of course, a devastating effect on European prospects. It's a decision-making tree, if I can put it that way, where you have several crossroads, and we always took the wrong fork as we went down the road. Yeah. The first, of course, was the Maastricht Treaty, where it was quite clear that in the French case, the Maastricht Treaty was the utmost which the body politic at the time could bear. It passed with barely 51% of the vote. Mitterrand had to work very, very hard to get the referendum passed. Much, if not to say the most, of the mainstream right was against the treaty. Philippe Séguin, François Fillon were against it, and when Chirac was elected president in 1995, part of his electoral platform was to have a referendum on the single currency with the hope, of course, of destroying it, which was sort of bizarre. Things started to go badly wrong even before the currency existed. That is all
because of cheap money for
cheap money with the markets considering rightly or wrongly, but certainly the treaties did not allow them to consider that to be right, that this was a currency which would be underpinned by the guarantee of the Bundesbank of Germany. And indeed, the way Germany sold the euro to its own population reinforced the attitude of the markets. That is, the slogan which was used in Germany was "Stark wie die Mark," as strong as the mark. And we get, in the early years of 2000, at about the time when the euro is formally put into place as a currency which people can use with coins and bills and so on, we then get the promise of a constitution, the European Constitutional Treaty, preceded by a convention like the American Convention back in the 1780s to craft the American Constitution. So a federal sounding show was put back on the road, and this I rather liked. I'm a federalist at heart. I mean, I consider that we would not be having the problems that we have with the euro today if we had had a federal underpinning to the currency. Problem when the treaty came up for ratification, in 2 out of the 6 founding members of the European Union, we have a no vote in a referendum.
Yeah.
And out of the 4 other ones, only Luxembourg has a referendum, which was passed with a bit more than 60% of the vote. But, you know, if you only get 60% or so in Luxembourg, which is arguably the most federalist country in the Union, you know that you're in deep trouble. So exit the constitution. This meant that we were not going to have the ability to build up the foundations, the political foundations, to ensure the long-term viability of the euro. The currency was put to the test with the great financial crisis, 2008. Very quickly, 2009, anybody who could observe could see that the divergence of interest rates within the Union was, within the eurozone, was beginning. It was not taken seriously ab initio. If the Greek issue had been dealt with before it came to an open crisis in early 2010, maybe we would not have noticed. Maybe we would have been able to set aside much of what has happened. But of course, we didn't do anything about it. I mean, why didn't we do anything about it? Because doing something about it would actually have meant either to put Greece into a holiday from the euro for 10 or 15 years, which I think would actually have been the wise thing to do, and or to start building the federal institutions necessary to underpin the euro. Both of these things were politically impossible to contemplate. So we decide not to save the euro or to save Greece. We decide to save our banks. And when I say we, I mean in this case particularly the French and the Germans. The French and the German banks were heavily exposed in Greece. They had irresponsibly lent money to a country which everybody knew did not have a land registry, did not have an effective tax collection service, was fiddling its statistics, etc. These 2 things we've known about Greece for the last 150 years. You know, this was not a scoop. And the notion that banks like the rating agencies had not been doing due diligence before lending or before giving high marks is something which is troubling. So here we are in early 2014. Greece has been subjected to the longest and deepest economic depression in modern history. If it takes 20 or 25 years to put things right again, and to maybe then move to the federal solution, that doesn't scare me in itself. What I do note is that today any politician who goes to the people saying, I suggest that we transfer even more power to the folks in Brussels, that person's political career is over before it has begun. So there is definitely no political offer, and there isn't going to be political offer for federalist solutions until we have had a return to growth and for quite some time. Draghi has bought us time. The question is how much time? Normally I would say, let's say 3 years, maybe 4. My suggestion is that we should seriously consider, first academically, because I think the debate has to be academic way before it becomes political. I don't think it would be wise for politicians to wade into this debate now, precisely because things are reasonably quiet. And that academic debate should be, can we walk back the euro? Can we walk back more or less to where we were in the mid-90s, before the markets made their crazy and wrong assumption that the euro was stark wie die Mark, which, by the way, the markets have now abandoned. So in that sense, the markets are already back in 1995. Since the beginning of the crisis, and precisely because the markets have decided that there was no single financial space in Europe, in the eurozone, sovereign debt has begun to be renationalized. In Italy, most of the debt is national.
Yeah.
In Spain, the renationalization has been happening very, very quickly. The one country in which it has not happened very much is actually France. If you walk back the euro, countries in which there would be major devaluations, like Spain and Italy, could get away with them. Precisely because the value of their debt will not actually change. But there's one case which really drew my attention in terms of, how do you do a continental scale monetary transformation? Yeah. And the one big contemporary case which I found was Brazil in 1993-94, when they moved to the real. Mm-hmm. You know, Brazil is huge. It's as large as Europe. It has 27 states, which is convenient parallel with the Union. At the time when I wrote it, we also there were only 27. And of course, if you want to do a rapid monetary transformation, you have to keep secrecy. Brazil is a Latin country. It also has a culture of corruption, insider trading, etc., etc. And yet, in this they succeeded extremely well, because it was very, very rapid. It was done within the space of days. It was very, very, very impressive. So the notion that you can do these things quickly is not a fantasy, because some readers have come back to me and said, but you make this look like a James Bond movie, etc. With bankers and heads of state meeting in a secret location to, this is not the way it's done, etc. Well, I'm very sorry. This actually is the way it's done. Yeah. This is the way it was done in 1914. This is the way it was done in Brazil in 1994. Yes, you need to do these things quickly. You need to do them secretly. So I also looked at how would this be done politically. You go back to the European Monetary Union such as it existed 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. That is, what did you have? You had fluctuation bands. Mm-hmm. That is the snake. The snake. In France we called it le serpent, where you had where currencies were allowed to float within limits. Is this ideal? No, it's not ideal. Is this better than what we've actually have over the last years? The answer is obviously yes. If Italy or Spain were currently in a position to do, let's say, a 10% correction in a snake-type configuration, they would not simply be floating around 0% growth, because, well, Spain may be just maybe moving out of recession. But to get rid of 25% of unemployed, they're going to have to do 3% a year for a long time. And that's not on the horizon. They need the boost of a devaluation. Ditto with Italy. But you give them a 10 or 20% devaluation, and they go off like a rocket on the export markets, on the global markets. This is what they need. And of course, you do not actually kill the euro per se. You transform it back into what was the ECU, the European currency unit. Yes, you have a unit of account. Is this a great idea? No, it's not a great idea. But it's a lot better than the catastrophic destruction of the euro, and it's a lot better than the endless recession that we've had in most of the European countries, even the Netherlands, for Christ's sake. Look at the Dutch economy, and of course the incredibly disruptive effect this has on the European project. Because here's something which I also realized when I was doing my research for my book. My expectation was that I would find disaffection amongst the European peoples vis-à-vis the euro per se. Well, of course, yes. There are some countries in which the euro is not very popular, like Germany. But the attitudes toward the euro have hardly varied since the beginning of the crisis. You look at Greece, you look at Spain, you look at Germany, you look at France. Percentages are fairly. I mean, there are some ups and downs, but there is no downward. There is no general downward trend. People understand the instrumentality of the euro. It's very convenient to have the euro.
Yes.
That's just once again why I say this is not a great idea.
No.
But what you do have is a massive and growing disaffection vis-à-vis the European Union.
That's certainly happening.
It is the European project which is suffering as the result of the policies which we follow to keep the euro. This is my basic case. And if we continue like this, we will eventually have what statisticians would call a rupture of linearity. We've had a political miracle in Europe since 2007. In no European country except Hungary have we had a victory of the forces of populism. And in the eurozone, no country has seen the political victory of the forces of populism. This is marvelous. Well, there were two kinds of reactions. One which I found quite broadly, and I found rather reassuring, is that people that, this guy is a federalist. If he says this, maybe we should try to understand why he's saying it.
Okay, well, that's a good response.
That's what I call a healthy. Maybe they can come to the conclusion that I'm completely crazy and have lost my bearings. That may happen, although I do not actually hear that. And I would add, and this is very much to their credit, had very useful discussions in Brussels. Here again,
within the commission,
with people working in the commission, with people, always through think tank channels, of course. But the reaction was not this is unmentionable and therefore it's unspeakable and therefore we're not going to engage with this guy. As for Greece, this is rather funny. My first foreign translation contract is with Greece, which sort of surprised me. But in France, it's been very different. In France, there has been no engagement. You've had what I'd call normal book reviews, and nothing wrong with that, but very little debate. Very few one-on-ones or interviews. Why? Because we are in a deeply polarized political situation, very deeply polarized, and where nothing is looked at on its merits and everything is looked at in political context. And well, the political context is that if you're in the National Front, you are against Europe and you're against the euro, and if you are not in the National Front, you're for Europe and therefore for the euro. So there's the framing is completely binary. The notion that maybe one can look at matters with a more open mind. That has been very difficult to do here. Maybe after the European elections, I don't know. But as time goes on, how many years will it take Spain or Italy to come back to the level where they were 10 years ago? We have a lost decade. We have a lost generation. In a way which was entirely avoidable. This has not happened in any other part of the world. Even Japan, which has a political system which does not lend itself to decisive action, has managed to the oldest society in the world. Its demographics are worse than any European country. Its economy has been mismanaged for the last 20 years, etc. But even there, they have signs of life. And what we're doing for the moment is not federalism in the sense that you have in the United States or Brazil or India or Switzerland. What we're doing is attempts at elements of integration. We are more in a centralizing attitude than in a subsidiarity attitude. Voilà.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
No, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've been going on for an hour now. That's